And with Republicans gaining control of the House, a changing of committee chairmanship is about to get underway. For Wall Street, no committee is more important than financial services. And currently, it is headed by Massachusetts Democratic Congressman Barney Frank. The committee's ranking Republican, Spencer Baucus of Alabama, has been expected to take over for Barney Frank. But our next guest is challenging that and would like to challenge the seat. Joining us now in our first on CNBC interview is Congressman Ed Royce, Republican from California. Congressman, good to have you on the program.
Thank you, Maria.
So with the shift in power in the House, your Republican colleague Spencer Baucus of Alabama would take over the chairmanship of Financial Services Committee. Why challenge it?
Well, under our process, none of this is a foregone conclusion. We have a steering committee, and you go before the steering committee, you present your case. And here's the case or the argument that I would lay out. I am the only member in the House who actually prepared legislation and advanced legislation to the floor of the House to control the systemic risk at Fannie and Freddie before the crisis occurred. I've worked on this issue since the 90s, and in 2004 I advanced my legislation, which Fannie and Freddie lobbied against, and of course Chairman Barney Frank worked against. But the bottom line is this. The bottom line is this. It turns out that the Federal Reserve was right, and I was right, about the systemic risk posed by allowing these institutions to over-leverage, to go into arbitrage, to be in a position in which they had a mandate on them because of political intervention to buy these subprime loans. I think we need leadership on the committee going forward in which we have someone with a background in business and finance who has worked on these issues, rally the members of the committee in order to take on this issue going forward of moral hazard and having clear rules and strong enforcement so that we don't have the type of over-leveraging we've had in the past.
What difference would the financial industry see then with you in charge as opposed to Spencer Baucus?
Well, I think what you would see is someone who understands the problem with moral hazard and is concerned about several things. One, making sure there's access to credit for home buyers and for job creators in this economy. But second, knowing that we need these clear rules laid down for safety and soundness so that we don't repeat the types of mistakes that have been made in the past. This is a debate I've had for a long time with Chairman Barney Frank over specific decisions where we needed to give the regulators the ability to go in and regulate for systemic risk and deleverage these particular portfolios. Now we have some legislation that we've just passed, the Dodd-Frank bill, that also has some provisions in it that tie the hands of regulators on safety and soundness issues and allow the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to make decisions without the ability of the safety and soundness regulator, the prudential regulator, to check that or stop that decision if it risks safety and soundness. So I think we need this kind of leadership.
Would some of your agenda partly be to look at Dodd-Frank and try to change some parts of it?
Oh, absolutely. I think I offered amendments in the conference markup in which I was not able to convince Chairman Frank and his colleagues to go along on the Democrat side. But I think in retrospect, there are more and more people realizing that, yes, the economists are right and the regulators are right when they raise this issue, that we should never tie their hands just because we have some political end in mind. I would just go back to the way in which the market was muscled under the GSEs to do zero down payment loans because the presumption was we wanted to get everybody into a house.
So would Fannie and Freddie and the GSEs, would that be among your top priorities?
Yeah, that would be a priority of mine. And it's taken us a long, long time to get into this mess because we allowed this to build without deleveraging those portfolios for so long. So now you've got losses of about $360 billion projected right now for the taxpayers. It's going to take a long time to wind this thing down as well. And in the meantime, currently refinancing the housing finance sector of the economy is going to take a lot of thoughtful, very careful work. because we're in a position where the economy is hurting, a lot of homeowners are hurting, and so we have to be very careful going forward in terms of how we calibrate this and how we enact these changes.
Congressman, there is some talk that you're throwing your hat into the ring expecting to lose.
No.
But you know that Mr. Baucus has to step down within 2 years because of House GOP rules. So are you basically laying the groundwork for that moment in time?
I am not, and here's why. I understand that my colleague is saying that, but I, of course, have also talked to the leadership, and I've also talked to the steering committee members. And I'm running because, A, of the encouraging way in which those discussions have gone, and B, because I happen to have been on the right side of these arguments and these issues. And going forward, we're going to have to put together an agenda that we not only pass through the committee and get through the Senate, but in addition, we're going to have to message this and go out and argue and articulate this position to the media and around the country so that people understand how we got into this mess and what we need to do to get out of it. And I've been encouraged by my colleagues who say that because of my direct involvement for so many years in it and because of my background, that I'm best equipped to do that.
Where do you think will be the real heat as both sides of the aisle try to get things done? You know, the president yesterday came out, seemed a lot more humbled than we've seen him before, although there was really no sort of admission that people did not want health care and that perhaps that was a mistake. But still, where do you think the heat is going to be? For months, we've been hearing the president basically take shots at John Boehner and John Boehner takes shots at the president. How are we supposed to believe they're really going to work together?
Well, I think the key to so much of this is the Senate and the attitudes over in the Senate where a number of Democrats are beginning to ask themselves, and I would take Ron Wyden as an example, where he says, look, we can't have these types of tax increases. He's talked to me about this, and he said it's going to further stall the economy if in January we've got these types of hikes that operate as a lug on our economic engine. He's prepared to do something about that. So I think what you're going to see is a number of Democrats combined with Republicans in the Senate working with the legislation that we pass out of the House, and that will put legislation on the president's desk which I think, A, is going to remove a lot of the uncertainty that's out there in the economy, because now people will have a agenda going forward where they understand exactly what's going to happen with taxes, what's going to happen with issues like the labor issues, card check, and so forth. And I think the return of that certainty in the equation is going to help us. I think the president will probably have to sign a lot of that legislation because he's going to get pressure from some Senate Democrats who understand the necessity of turning this economy around.
All right, Congressman, good to have you on the program. We'll be watching the developments, and we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, see you soon, sir.